Narcissists have definitely developed a reputation for always playing the victim, but what's behind this behavior? Do they really believe that they are victims? And why do they always resort to this? Welcome to Looking Behind the Mirror, where we explore narcissism and take our lives back as we make sense out of nonsense. As a quick disclaimer, everything I say is based on my opinions and my personal experiences. I'm not a professional, and if you're really struggling, I encourage you to seek professional help. I am providing links below for you. Narcissists have an uncanny ability to turn themselves into the victim in almost any given scenario. And what's ironic about this is a lot of the time they play the victim in scenarios in which they have actually created victims of whatever it is they're doing. It's just that the consequences of their poor choices or their abusive behavior is what makes them feel like the victim. For example, if somebody leaves them because of their abusive behavior, they are now the victim of broken promises. If they get fired for stealing money, they are the victim because their boss owed them that money anyway, and their workplace never trusted them, and that's why they were checking up on them in the first place. Somehow, even when they are clearly in the wrong, they are still the victim. Even for seemingly insignificant things, like if they wake up late, sleep past their alarm, it's somehow your fault for not waking them up in time, or they are the victim of their phone because their phone malfunctioned. They can never really take responsibility for anything that they've done that results in negative consequences. I mean, even if they punch someone in the face, now they're the victim because their hand hurts. So why do they do this? I think for most of us, quote, normal people, constantly playing the victim seems a little pathetic. I think a lot of us have a clear enough view of how ridiculous it can be in some circumstances that we have a little too much pride or self-respect to resort to this every time we make a mistake. For narcissists, their sense of reality is based on how they feel about things, so playing the victim offers benefits to them, and it makes them feel a certain way. And the reality of how ridiculous this can get is completely lost on them, because if they feel like they're getting away with something, if they feel like they're the victim, and they feel like their story is compelling enough, that's all they care about. They're completely removed from any feelings or idea of how frustrated people might become with them, how annoyed people may become, how pathetic they may seem. And if anybody dares judge them for playing the victim, they can just use that to become more of a victim. So these specific things that victimhood offers them is first deflection or distraction. When you're the victim, people are supposed to focus on the awful thing that has happened to you. So when there's a true victim in real life, people are very slow to look at the things that they've done wrong. So if a narcissist chooses to be a victim and can frame the situation in a way that makes him or her the victim, somehow that alleviates them of all responsibility for anything bad they may have done. They're the victim. How dare you bring up anything bad they may have done? How dare you bring up any sort of criticism after what terrible thing that they've had to endure? And also, when they are the victim of somebody that they have actually victimized, they can focus on whatever it is that makes them a victim and say, well, okay, I may have done something bad, but what you did was so much worse. Another benefit to victimhood for narcissists is it gives them a place to direct their anger. Narcissists are always angry and frustrated, and they're rarely in touch with the exact reasons why. They're usually looking for an explanation for their anger and frustration that is palatable to them. The truth is usually something they don't want to look at. So if they feel angry and frustrated over maybe the consequences of their behavior, they're going to look for a place to direct that anger and frustration that doesn't involve looking at the truth of the situation. And one convenient place would be victimhood. If they can focus on all the terrible things that have happened to them and how unfair and unjust the world is, that gives them a place to direct that anger. That gives them a place to kind of purge themselves of the frustration of the consequences of the way that they choose to live their lives. It's a much more comfortable place to dump all of those uncomfortable emotions. It's easier for a narcissist to say, I'm not mad at myself for flunking out of school. I'm mad at the teacher for being unfair with me and purposefully grading me lower than she should have. And in a situation like that, a victim doesn't have to do anything about it. If, like in that example, you were going to school and you were just lazy and you didn't do your work, or you didn't study hard enough, or maybe the material is just too difficult for you, it's a lot more comfortable to blame the system and to blame your teacher, but it also kind of ties your hands. I mean, if the whole system's rigged and everybody's out to get you, what can you do about it, really? You can't really fix a problem that doesn't actually exist. And so as the victim in your own imaginary scenario, you can kind of sit back and take it easy because all the work's been done. There's nothing else to do. The world's unfair. You're a victim. There's no more effort required. Narcissists are also attracted to victimhood because it allows them to continue to see themselves as perfect. Pathologically narcissistic people cannot handle the idea of imperfection. They think in black and white terms and they split everybody, including themselves. This means that if they have any imperfections at all, if anything isn't absolutely wonderful and amazing, then they will perceive themselves as a complete piece of garbage. This is how they perceive themselves. They must perceive themselves as flawless and perfect, or they are consumed by an unbearable self-hatred. If they are the victim, then nothing can ever be their fault. No flaws can be directly attributed to them. They can maintain the illusion, or at least the delusion, that they are a perfect, flawless human being if they can just blame everything on everyone else and their victimhood. And this is a reason that oftentimes when narcissists are complaining about being the victim, they truly believe it. They really do believe in their victimhood, and they're very invested in that idea. And this is why they need to believe that they are flawless and perfect, or they will have to deal with intolerable feelings of self-loathing and worthlessness. So when they're trying to convince you that they're the victim, even when you are an actual victim of theirs, they really need you to believe it, because if you believe it, if you buy into their story, and if you accept that they're the victim, then that makes it easier for them to believe it, and they really, really need to believe it. This is why they're so invested in making you take the blame for everything, why they will turn things around on you, like, I wouldn't yell at you if you would just listen to me, or I wouldn't have to get angry at you if you weren't so selfish, or of course I acted like that. Can't you see how much you've hurt me? Narcissists may even play the victim when people unintentionally insult them out of actual concern. For example, maybe a narcissist is struggling with something. Maybe they're overwhelmed and stressed out, and maybe they're not keeping their home up like they normally do. And maybe a loved one, out of concern, mentions, hey, are you doing okay? I've noticed that you're having a hard time keeping up with your housework. And let's say that this person truly was concerned and had good intentions and was trying to help somebody. A narcissist may turn this whole thing around and feel, of course, very offended at the suggestion of imperfection. And I think this is a scenario that we could see could easily turn into the narcissist being the victim of, how dare you criticize me? And they could begin to project all kinds of things onto this well-meaning family member that was just trying to express genuine concern. A situation like that, in which a well-meaning person offers some constructive criticism or expresses concern, is a golden opportunity for a narcissist to become the victim, and then use that victimhood for all the benefits that I just went over. This is why when you have a narcissist in your life, it really is almost never a good idea to express concern or to offer any kind of constructive criticism that even remotely suggests that the narcissist is somehow not the most perfect, flawless human being on earth. You are going to end up being punished, and they are going to end up viewing themselves as a victim. You're a victim. Now, when we talk about narcissists being victims, I think that vulnerable narcissists can be called to mind quite easily. But all types of narcissists play the victim, they just do it in different ways. So a vulnerable narcissist may play the victim in ways in which they guilt trip you, or they cry, or they go on and on about how hurt they are and how mean you are, and oh my gosh, why is everybody always picking on me? Whereas maybe a more grandiose, overt narcissist may become enraged and may just start going on a rant about how unfair everything always is, and why can't anybody ever give me a fair chance? What's wrong with the world? It's basically the same message and the same manipulation tactic, but with just very different delivery styles. Both vulnerable and grandiose, overt narcissists will feel just as victimized by anything that doesn't go the way they think it should. And to you and me, like I said earlier, this might seem really pathetic, and we might really be at a loss wondering, doesn't this person have any self-respect or pride? But you have to remember that they're invested in the idea of being a victim, and they believe in their world they actually are a victim. And if they actually were a victim, you wouldn't think that whatever it is they're doing is pathetic, because they'd actually be a victim. Your view of their victimhood is based on reality, and narcissists don't base their judgments on actual reality. They base their judgments on how they feel about things. And if they truly feel like a victim, then they believe that they are a victim. And if they believe they're a victim, they believe they have the right to act like one. There's nothing pathetic about an innocent victim, right? And this is why it's really best not to try to explain things to them or try to defend yourself even, because you will go in endless circles with them and they will just feel more and more victimized by the objective truth that you try to impose on them. They are rigidly devoted and dedicated to being a victim, and you're not going to convince them otherwise. In fact, your attempts to do so are just going to result in more victimization, more tools that they can use to convince themselves that nothing's their fault, the world's out to get them, and absolutely anything negative that ever happens to them has got to be blamed on anyone but them. The negative consequences of their own actions make them a victim, even when the negative consequences are coming from the people that they've hurt, that they've victimized. Somehow, if in their imagination they can keep their hands clean and keep themselves the victim, everything works out. Narcissists live in a fantasy world where if they can convince themselves that they're a victim, they're a victim. And if you don't believe that, you're just some kind of person that doesn't care about victims. You're somebody that's willing to pick on and criticize an innocent victim. They want to be the victim, and they aren't going to let you take that away from them. I hope this helps. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and comment below any ideas you have for me for future videos. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you like this video and would like to see more like it in the future. Until next time, thanks. Bye.